today. We're going to talk about soccer, and the biggest story of the season, really, in many ways, is the Manchester United story. It's probably the biggest club in the world in terms of revenue, in terms of interest, and also, along with Real Madrid, in terms of a long and wonderful history. My guest today, John Giles, played for Manchester United for 7 years. He won an FA Cup winners' medal in 1963, playing in a great team, or at least a potentially great team, with great players. Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law played in that team, Harry Gregg played in that team, Paddy Crerand, of course John Nobby Stiles. So he was there for that. They also, in the same season, in fact, flirted with relegation. So it wasn't all happy days. And to talk about not just the crisis of this week, but the history of Manchester United in its modern history, and how, in a way, this crisis is not the first. We're going to talk about that. John, it's a fascinating club. You were there for 7 years. I was there for 5 myself, although my part in it was only as a spectator. The one thing that strikes me about the present crisis post Alex Ferguson is that it bears some eerie resemblance to the post Matt Busby crisis. When Busby resigned in 1969, having won the European Cup, as it then was, the Champions League as it is now, the club turned, at Busby's instigation, clearly, to Wilf McGuinness. And they had 5 managers. Wilf McGuinness, then they had Frank O'Farrell, an Irishman, a very respected figure in the game. They had Dave Sexton, again an English coach who'd done a great job at Chelsea and was again a respected figure in the game. They had Tommy Docherty and then Ron Atkinson. So now, after in the post-Ferguson era, they've tried David Moyes, who was a friend of Ferguson's, almost a protege, you might say, a bit like Wilf. Then they went Van Gaal. Then they've gone Mourinho. The latest is Solskjaer. Mistake after mistake after mistake. Just to go back to Busby and the team you were in. Playing for Manchester United, John, has its own pressures, does it not? Well, you played for Leeds, which became a very big club, and for Don Revie, who was a big manager. But Manchester United is sort of something else almost.
Well, obviously, Eamon, it is and was, because Busby was a great manager. And when I was at the club and when you were at the club, they already had a history.
Yeah, the
Munich 1948 team won the cup. 1952, they won the cup. We had the Munich air disaster, the Busby Babes. All those were there. Obviously, when the Munich air disaster happened, then it wiped most of that away. And it brought a new era and a new type to Manchester United. Manchester United, for the first time, were buying players outside the club.
Yes.
More so than they never done before.
Yes.
So the Busby Babe situation was finished.
Yes. The idea of nurturing your own players.
Yes.
Giving players a chance when they were young.
Yeah. And outstanding players, Eamon.
Yes.
You see, Matt Busby had the pick of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales schoolboys. And he had a head start on everybody else. So if you look at the Munich air disaster, I think there was only about 3 people in that particular crash or in that team that came from outside the club.
Yeah.
So it was the Busby Babes.
Yes.
When the Munich air disaster happened, as you know, I think Harry Craig just come to the club, Noel Cantwell, Maurice Sedders, David Hurd.
Yeah.
Lots of players were bought in. Yes. So the Busby Babe situation, if we call it a situation, was gone.
That culture
was lost.
Of nurturing your own players. Yeah.
So Matt Busby then had to pick that up from a zero position, which he did brilliantly, as we know. You know, Dennis Law came in, Paddy Crerand came in, 1 or 2 other players came in, along with the players like Bobby Charlton.
Yeah.
Were still there.
And Nobby Stiles.
And Nobby came through as a young lad. Yes. Tony Dunn.
The feeling, I think, with Busby after the Munich air crash, John, and it's sometimes forgotten, Matt Busby went to Manchester United as manager in 1945 in the post-war period, just after the war. It was a bomb site. It had been bombed during the war. It had never been the number one club in Manchester. Manchester City actually had been, and Busby himself had played for City. But he went there. Now, what's not often remembered is how long it took him to succeed. He did inherit players that were already there, but it took him quite some time to win a league. In 1948, they won the Cup. And that was his first success. And that's 3 seasons in. But then the next trophy they won was, as you say, they won the league in 1952. But that's 7 years. Just in terms of the time that's allotted to people in the modern game. Now, it took him 7 years, and then it took him really, after that, I think it was 1955-56 that the Busby, that his own team won the league and wanted to go into Europe. So it took him the bones of a decade to build the team that he had dreamt of, that he envisaged. So a decade is a long time. Now, post-Munich, this is the point I want to make.
Sorry, just to stop you there. Like, in what he was doing, it wasn't a long time.
No.
Do you know, because the transformation was so great. Like, the Busby Babes, he was the first one to do what was done with the young, getting outstanding on putting them in. Do you know what I mean? Like, in 1952, they won the league with their old team. And then he had to create from then, instead of buying players in like a lot of clubs did, he was introducing the Duncan Edwards and a couple of players.
David Coleman,
all these, Roger Byrne, were all coming into the team.
Roger Byrne actually played as a winger in the 52 team.
But he came in, like Bill Foulkes came in. Of course, because there had to be a transformation from the great 48 team. Most of them were still there when they won the league in 1952. So to do what he did to win it, actually, in what he did, it was 10 years, but it wasn't a long time, if you know me, because they were set now for life.
No, but here's the relevance of it. It had taken him 10 years to really create this force that then was going to dominate and did dominate the English game. And post-Munich, he's now, 1958 was the crash. He lost 8 players. He was, himself, who knows what hurt was inside, because the whole idea of Europe was, his responsibility. Now, he didn't have 10 years at that stage. Hence, he had to start. He couldn't do it again, the build up and the 10 years. This is the point. He had to buy, to go into the transfer market, and did go in. And the relevance to now is also, nobody's got 10 years now. And so the situation that has faced the club post Alex Ferguson, it took Ferguson also 3 years, and he was on the brink of the sack when they got a run in the cup, and there was a famous game at Oxford United. A lad called Robbins scored the goal, saved them, and that saved. So time is important in this story, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You see, when Matt Busby was having his time, which I absolutely agree with, Eamon, he was making progress.
Yes.
He was getting better. So the fans live with that, and the club live like that, live with it, especially the Busby Babes, because he wasn't spending any money. Eamon. Like, if you look at if you're comparing it today, say Mourinho and all that, like there's 40 million for a player and 50 million for a player and 70 million for a player. Busby was doing it on a shoestring.
It was, yeah.
When you went to the club and I went to the club, I was a few years before you. Actually, they could run the club on the Central League gates.
Yes, that was the reserve team game.
That was the reserve team. No, because the reserve team were full of these young players.
Yes.
Right, so the crowds used to come and watch them because they were anxious and said, look at so-and-so coming into the team. Bobby Charlton, for example, was in the reserves. Great players. And they loved it. It's coming 25,000 at the match.
Yes. Right?
In the meantime, Busby is gone. See, the progress never stopped.
No.
And if you're making progress, I mean, they live with you. In Mourinho's case, Mourinho wasn't making progress.
Yeah, and the other
thing, going backwards.
The other thing about Busby's time was that there was no tradition behind where they'd been winning everything. Manchester United had not been a very successful club. They'd been actually relegated and they'd been up and down. They were a mid-table team. He made Manchester United and he created And Ferguson embellished this fantastic
but Busby did
tradition for winning.
At that time, you see, there wasn't as much pressure on the managers to be doing anything. There was no Europe. There was no the top four.
Yeah.
Right. There was two relegated. You know what I mean? Winning the cup was the thing rather than the league.
Yes.
So while he was making progress in that way, like any team, I remember teams like Huddersfield and Everton in that time finishing fourth.
Yes.
Great season for them.
Yes.
You know, year in, year out. They didn't expect to win it. And a lot of the supporters didn't expect him to win it. No. So in Matt Busby's case, he was making progress and then actually won the cup in 48 to get him then in 52, then it was 56 again, 57.
Yes.
So the gaps of his success weren't too great.
No.
For people to say, this fella's great.
Well, yeah, and of course, Manchester United haven't been winning things.
No, there's no tradition in it. No.
Johnny Carey was his first captain, someone that you admired. And I played for an Irish team managed by Johnny Carey, but he was an Irishman involved and a captain of the club and renowned for his character, which Busby valued. The other point I want to get to is the post-Busby period. The first, he had been such a giant. He'd been there from 45. It was now 69.
Yeah.
So we're talking, 24 years. The Munich air crash, the European tradition, the great players. Now there was a huge gap to be filled, a huge void. And he still had influence and power. And we were both around the club, or you were in the game. I was around the place. So he opted for Wilf McGuinness, who Wilf had been, and you knew Wilf very well, played with him. I knew Wilf. He was my youth team coach. He had a good career up to a point, but he got a bad injury.
Yeah.
He'd been in England under 22 international. He'd been on the fringes of the Busby Babe team.
Yeah, he played in the full team as well.
Oh, he played in the team, yeah.
No, the international team.
And the
he was really, really. He was one of the original Busby Babes. Actually.
Now he was youth team coach, and but he actually hadn't even done that. I think Busby decided he was the man to succeed him. Now that has a resonance with Ferguson deciding, although it's a bit unfair to David Moyes, because David had a really good record, I thought, at Everton, and was a really good manager.
Yeah. Well, there would be some resemblance, Eamon, but I think the biggest change in that was that when Wilf was appointed manager by Matt Busby, he didn't step away.
No, Busby didn't. No. He kept an office.
I think, to be fair to Ferguson, I think he did step away and let Moyes.
Yes, he did.
Get on with it.
Yes,
Yeah. Wilf didn't get that chance.
No.
Wilf didn't get, and Wilf failed miserably.
Yes.
Really.
But Wilf was trying to manage big personalities who he'd played with or known, and also they started fighting with each other. We knew some of the people. Jim McCrerand was still there. No Cantwell. No was gone. Sorry, Bobby. Bobby was the big player in the club. Now Bobby and Wilf had they been friends?
Pals,
yeah. And that broke down, didn't it?
Yes.
In a big way. And of course, George was there as well, George Best. Yeah. George and Bobby didn't get on. Bobby didn't approve of George's sort of lifestyle, shall we say.
Yes.
And Wilf didn't know how to manage that. So
it's difficult for Wilf.
Tough.
Very, very tough, Eamon, because, they say in football, there's a time to go in, there's a time to get out. And I don't think Matt Busby planned it, but it was the ideal time to get out. Because they won the cup in 1968, the European Cup in 1968, as we know. But actually, they were on the downward slide at that stage.
Yes, they were.
Like in 1969, they weren't a patch on the team from 2 years previously.
Yeah.
So Wilf was left, as you quite rightly say, with a very, very difficult situation.
Yeah.
Very difficult situation.
And he was quite a volatile character himself, Wilf.
Yeah, Wilf was as a player, he was a physical player and enthusiasm and all that.
Yeah.
But he didn't stand a chance. I mean,
no,
he didn't. To be fair, I don't think he had the authority that was needed at that particular time in the club. And I think Sir Matt Busby didn't step away to leave him to it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Now the next move, Wilf went and he had a nervous breakdown. it was very bad. I remember he lost all his hair.
Oh, he's terrible.
And he aged. It was a shocking experience for him because he was genuine. He was a Manchester lad.
Through and through,
He was Manchester United through and through. He'd never been anywhere else in his career. This was it. They turned down to Frank O'Farrell. Frank had been manager of Leicester. He'd got Leicester promoted. I think he'd done really well with the club. He had a good reputation. Built in the lower leagues, and he was a strong and devout Catholic, a very, very straight man. I know I interviewed, for my Busby book, I interviewed Frank. I went to see him. He lives in Torquay, Devon. He still lives there. Thank God he's in good health. And Frank was very bitter. He said the first day he arrived, I mean, he was one of those coaches that he was always going to get the next big job in England. He had that reputation that he'd built up. And he said when he went to Old Trafford to be interviewed for the job, he went with his wife. This would be Frank, he's a family man. And then the first day he turned up for work, Busby met him, and he showed Frank into a kind of a small office. Well, an office.
Yeah.
And Frank said, "Where's your office?" and Matt said, "Oh, well, why?" Well, Frank says, "I'm the manager of Manchester United." So he stood up. He was aware of what had happened to Wilf, and he was going to be his own man. So he insisted that Busby vacate his office, and Frank went in there. But it didn't work.
No, but again, I mean, it goes back to Matt didn't step away. He didn't step away. And it can happen in football. Manchester United had been his life, and all of a sudden you're retiring or you're out. Many people, it's very hard to accept that. He'd done so much for the club. I mean, obviously, I think he used to step away and let the new manager do what he wanted. He didn't do that. So Wilf had no chance because Wilf was a young player, really, with Matt Busby. And I'd say Matt had unbelievable influence on Wilf. Frank O'Farrell would be a different kettle of fish because he was a more mature man and he'd been in management. So he wasn't prepared to accept that. But he wouldn't be on the right side of Busby.
No, and
doing that.
Now, this is where the uniqueness of Manchester is important to register. I was thinking about this a lot over recent weeks. Manchester's a small town, small city, and old players are there. The players of now are there. Matt lived a 10-minute drive from the ground. He played golf at Davy Hume Golf Club, where I'm sure they still go. The players who are now playing for Frank O'Farrell were also playing golf at Davy Hume. And I know Frank told me, and other people I'm sure you'll confirm, like someone like Willie Morgan, who was playing he was playing golf with Matt on a Sunday. So this was deadly because they were complaining about the present manager. Now, the relevance of this will become apparent when we get to Alex Ferguson and his sort of presence at the club at the moment. But let's just go to, Frank told me that he confronted Busby about this. He said, "I'm trying to manage these guys and they have your ear."
Well, again, it's again, go back to, he didn't step away, Eamon.
No.
I mean, that's called not stepping away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he shouldn't be talking to the players. Shouldn't be talking to the players.
No, well, they're getting a second hearing, and it's undermining.
It's under the manager.
Yeah.
But Matt Busby was experienced enough manager to know that. I mean, I don't know for whatever reason. Nobody knows why didn't he step away. Maybe he just couldn't live without. He had to have a fluence. We don't know.
Yes.
But what we do know is that he did have an influence.
Yes.
And if the ex-manager has an influence, the present manager or the new manager has no chance.
Okay, we go to the next coach who came in, who was Dave Sexton. Dave was, again, he was getting the next big job. He had a big job at Chelsea. He did a really good job at Chelsea after Tommy Docherty had been there.
Yes.
He steadied that ship and managed some really outstanding players, people like Alan Hudson, Peter Osgood, and he was also a modernizer, should we say. He was a coach. He believed in the passing game. And that didn't work either.
Well, again, I don't know if he had much of a chance, Eamon.
For the same reason.
Yeah, because Dave Sexton, as you say, did a great job at Chelsea.
and was touted as a future England manager.
Oh yeah, because he did well. He had a terrific team at Chelsea.
Yes.
And to be fair to Tommy Docherty had a big say in leaving that team.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
For him, because Dave, you see,
created the team.
He had the players there.
Yeah.
I always got the impression with Dave, he didn't really want to be a manager, Eamon.
Yeah, he wanted to be a coach.
He wanted to be a coach.
Yes.
And I think that was his best thing. Now, when you go into Old Trafford with that attitude, then you're more inclined to leave it, the managerial side, to somebody else. And that's
the buying and the selling, for example.
Yeah. Matt was still there.
Yeah.
And I met there, you met there, I met there as a gentleman.
He was.
But I think he wouldn't have had the ambition to say, I'm going to manage man. I think he loved coaching.
Yes.
So he had the players on the pitch. And of course, you're only as good as the players you have, no matter how good a coach you are. So I don't think he had the actual say in it either.
No. Now we come to Tommy Docherty. Tommy Docherty had big character. I know Tommy, you know him, I certainly knew him. And he was a robust, irreverent football man to his fingertips and knowledgeable about the game, and had a record with Chelsea, but he was volatile.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to take no shit from Matt Busby.
I think that would be the case.
He told me.
Yeah.
I mean, I went...
Well, I never spoke to him about it, obviously, but I'm only going on an impression.
Yeah.
I think he was experienced enough, Eamon, as a player who wanted to be a manager, unlike David Sexton, who had seen what had happened before him, and I think and had the character and the guts to say, I'm not going to stand for that.
No. And he wasn't going to put up with any shit from George either.
No,
George, but he found, see, that George was declining. George was hanging outside the dressing room until about 20 to 3, coming in late, just... but George had his own problems, his own demons.
But Georgie was doing that, where he was up to more.
He was, yeah.
I mean, there was a situation. We played Manchester United in the Cup semi-final, I think it was 1970.
When you were playing for Leeds.
When I was at Leeds. Yeah. And we played at Villa Park in a replay, the Cup. And the message came through that Georgie, this was under Wilf McGuinness, actually, I think.
Yes, it was under Wilf.
That Georgie had been found with a grenade or something. And he played, he actually played in the match. And I honestly believe that was Matt's decision.
Yes. To
still
play.
And George, that was 1970. Now, Georgie was on his way out at that time. Like when Tommy Docherty took over.
What happened, and just let me be clear, because as I understand it, it was a Wednesday night, it was a replay. Everyone was resting in the afternoon.
That's right.
He was caught by Wilf with a woman in his bedroom. He said, get out. Wilf went back half an hour later. The woman was back in there. Now, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or not, is that you had a go at George during the match. You did.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Well,
come on.
I'll tell you, and all I can say now is that I was totally wrong what I did. I was being sanctimonious. We heard the news before, which was good news for us.
Yeah.
Right, really good news for us. But I thought, Georgie Best, like one of the best players in the world, was letting the game down him, that was just stupid from me.
Yeah.
But that's what I felt.
Yeah.
That's just being silly, really. That Georgie Best was this great player, and it was to our advantage that he was doing what he was doing.
So first of all, you got to lift as a team from knowing that one of the dangers had been acting the maggot all afternoon.
Yeah. It can't be right.
So what did you say to him, and when did you say it?
I don't know. I got into a tackle with him, and see, Georgie was what Georgie was doing. I was saying, "You so and so," and he was doing that to me.
Money.
Yeah. No, that made it worse.
Yeah.
So the next time we got into a clash, I did.
You did him.
Yeah.
Bad.
No. He played on. Played on, but I did. But I was stupid. Really, it's nothing to do with me. I mean, whether it was good for the game. That's what I felt at that particular time.
Yeah. Now,
I'm sorry for that.
Pardon?
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah,
I'd be sorry for that. I mean, years and years later, I apologised to Georgie.
Yeah.
When I saw him at a social event, it was just he was just immature in himself, and none of my business really.
Not really, but you do what you have to do anyway. Tommy Docherty's he had some success. He got down, but they got him back up.
Yeah,
I think they won a cup.
And they did.
Yeah, and he left the club in what I think were unfortunate circumstances. the physiotherapist's wife. He fell in love with her, as it happens, but he was regarded as a fling.
No.
In fact, he's still with that woman. Yeah. And I when I went to see him, they married and have lived for 40-something years together. So it wasn't what it was depicted as, but he left the club.
Yeah. Well, I think he was thrown out.
Yeah, he was thrown out. He left
the funny thing about Tommy Docherty actually was doing a good job at that time.
And Matt was still there.
Matt was still there, but I think he'd lost the influence at that stage.
He hadn't. He was still on. He was at the board meeting
when Tommy
and Louis Edwards was the chairman, and Matt was there still.
Oh yeah, he would do that. You see, I don't think he got on with Matt, but I think in regarding the influence on the team, Eamon,
of course, I know he no influence on the team.
And at that stage,
with the Doc, no,
and the Doc didn't get on with Bobby.
No, right.
Bobby was out.
Yeah.
Dennis Law was out.
Yeah.
So the Tommy Doc was making big changes. It was quite a young team.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Bobby retired under Tommy Doc.
Yes.
I think so. They were like Bobby was out, and Bobby was a legend, as we know. But Tommy Docherty was making these decisions.
Yeah,
I was quite successful doing it, Eamon. Like until we came to the situation that he was in.
Now this saga continued then with Big Ron Atkinson. I played against Ron. He played for Oxford. We played directly. He was a wing half. I was inside forward, and I knew him very well. And I didn't think anything too much of him, But I mean, he was a good guy. I didn't think he was a bad guy or anything like that. He was your successor at West Brom, and he did quite well there. You left him a good team, and he took
over a good team.
Took over. That's what I mean. Yeah, and he went to United. Yeah. He actually he won 2 FA Cups. They played with a bit of style.
Yeah.
They finished in the top 4 times, 4 years running. But then it couldn't quite sustain it. Now, I don't know what the Matt Busby situation was, but I doubt if Matt was influencing things.
I don't think so.
He couldn't get a grip on the club despite he had the energy. It looked good for a while, but he actually couldn't do it. Now, again, the uniqueness of Manchester United is the problem. The expectation. I mean, if you finish top 4 years running, you win 2 FA Cups, not enough.
No, it wasn't enough. And at this time, I think Liverpool were well on the scene.
Yes.
Eamon, you know? So there was a comparison then.
Yes.
Like Liverpool, who Manchester United don't like anyway, they don't like each other, down the road virtually. And
Manchester City had a good team with Colin Bell, Francis Lee.
That was a bit earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were being successful at the time when Manchester United was still in this very
decline. They came. Manchester City came in 1968. They won the league in '68 when United won the Champions League. What's now is the Champions League. But United were on the downward spiral in a big way at that time. I mean, they went from '68, I think, to 71, 72, or 73 to be relegated.
Yes.
And as you say, Manchester City won the cup in 68, they won the league in 69, they won the FA Cup in 70, they won 4 trophies in 3 years, so they were hugely successful.
Yes.
Before.
Which always accentuates the difficulty.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and we can make that comparison now with what City are doing and what United aren't doing.
Yeah.
But now to bring it forward, if you like, to the present situation and the post-Ferguson thing, they have tried various methods, ways, and they're floundering, it seems. And the Solskjaer decision, everyone now appears to agree that it was a mistake. And you said from the very time he was appointed, it was the wrong time to appoint him. They should wait until the end of the season. And you've been vindicated in that judgment. I actually thought, well, after the PSG thing and getting into the top 4, I didn't think they would get anywhere near the top 4. I thought, well, he's earned it. I mean, which is a kind of weak-minded.
And not really, Eamon. I think
that's what most people felt.
Yeah, well, see, the thing was with Solskjaer, you have to take the position that any manager comes into, you have to look at the position
Yes.
any manager comes to and the personality of that particular manager, right? Now, in Solskjaer's case, he was the ideal type of lad, personality, to do what needed to be done there. After the Mourinho situations where the players were humiliated, they were down, and Solskjaer came in, was friendly with them, and they went out and played. He was ideal for that.
Yes.
Right? But then when they got over that particular spell, now you need another type of manager.
Yes.
You need a Ferguson to come in and do it. Now, my doubt all the time was, can he change from being Solskjaer into a Ferguson? And I doubted that. That's why I was against him giving the point. Wait until the end of the season, or maybe give him a year at the most. But anyway, that's what they've done. They give him a 3-year contract. But it's situations that managers go into.
Yes.
Like in the case of taking over, and you're getting back to the point now with Ferguson and Busby, like, there aren't that many great managers.
No.
Busby was a great manager.
Yeah, and Ferguson was a powerful personality.
They could handle all these things, and he could build the Busby Babes, and he could rebuild a team. Ferguson came in, okay, he didn't do well for 3 seasons, but what he's done after that was unbelievable.
Yes.
But Ferguson wasn't arm around him and was playing with a smile.
Arm around the throat.
Around the throat, yeah. So that was I'm only giving you my take on Solskjaer. I think he's a nice lad, a lovely lad. It was ideal for what was needed at the time that he brought it, after Mourinho went. But now you need a different type of manager to take it on from there.
Now, the point about Ferguson at this stage, I mean, and this is where maybe the comparisons with Busby, the post-Busby period, tapers off a bit. I don't know. I think he was obviously the one who chose David Moyes.
You're talking about Ferguson?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
But there's just one thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Well, there was a different situation when Ferguson was appointed in relation to some of the other managers. Busby didn't have an influence at this stage.
Right.
Actually, one of the big influences was Bobby Charlton.
Yes.
At this particular stage.
Right.
And I know for
that's
a fact,
right, yeah.
Bobby lived with Ferguson.
He was an influence on Martin Edwards, who was the chairman.
Definitely.
And Martin was the man who could have sold the club for 10 million.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
Anyway, but Bobby was the big influence there. And Bobby was very, very wise and a Ferguson fan. So that's why...
stood by Alex.
Yeah.
When in the third season things were getting ropey,
bad.
Bobby was loyal to Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, and Bobby wasn't interfering.
No.
See, if you take it from the time when Matt was doing it with Wilf McGuinness, Matt was interfering.
Yeah.
Right? Bobby was actually behind.
Yeah, and
Ferguson.
It would be quite important to say, I think, note how influential a person, not because he seeks it, but because of the respect people have for Bobby, that he would be a big influence on behind the scenes in a quiet way.
Yes.
Bobby is, if you like, the conscience in a way of Manchester United. He goes right back to Busby, to Munich, and to everything. And Bobby is, I think, a fantastic man.
He's
a nice man.
Bobby is a very, very genuine individual.
And a deep love of Manchester.
Can be a bit hard work at times, but that's besides the point. But to be fair to him, he didn't want to be manager of the club. He wanted what was best for the club, and he felt that Alex Ferguson was best for the club. So the Busby influence at this stage is gone.
Yes.
So it gave Ferguson the time through Bobby, mostly through, but from what I know, through Bobby, to stay with that particular individual.
Okay, let's try to bring it up to date with David Moyes. I must say, John, he was given 9 months or thereabouts, but the dogs were barking after a very short period of time. When he bought Fellaini, your mate. Now, I think he was treated badly and unfairly and not given the time. But we leave that to one side. But it could be said of Alex Ferguson that he didn't back his man. If he still had influence with the Glazers and the people who were making decisions, and Ed Woodward was there at that time. In fact, Ed Woodward, the current chief executive, or whatever he's called, I'm not sure what the title is.
Some people have some different titles.
He was there when the Glazers took Manchester United over, apparently. He was part of that deal. So he's been a long-term advisor to them. So he's a big figure in all of this. But I thought that David Moyes was treated badly.
Yeah.
He wasn't given time. And the one thing we learned from this story is from Busby, it took, 6, 7, 8 years. To Ferguson, took 3 years and more, that you do need time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. But you can go back to the crux of it. Busby wasn't giving them time when he had the influence. When Ferguson came in, right, Matt Busby, I think, his influence had gone, and Bobby Charlton's influence was for the good that Ferguson could stay. Right. Now, so now it comes, Ferguson has anointed Moyes to it, right? Now, I think at this stage, Ferguson wouldn't have had the influence with Woodward, for example, that Bobby Charlton had
with Martin Edwards.
Right. I think after he wasn't doing very well, Moyes, I think Ferguson's influence was blown away.
Right.
Like Ferguson might have said, look, give him a chance. He's only doing that. We don't know. He could well have done. But I think Woodward was impatient.
There's a new
or whoever
harder
was there.
type of suit.
Yes. Gone. Like I see, when you look at the Moyes situation, Ferguson was never mentioned at all in the sacking of David Moyes.
No.
Because I don't think he was part of it.
Right.
Woodward was. Now, what you're seeing now...
And at this stage, of course, Bobby's influence would have waned completely.
Oh, totally. I think Bobby's influence was gone at that stage.
Well, it was because it was almost demonstrated. Because one of the things that Bobby did stop earlier was Mourinho. He said when Mourinho was first touted for the job a long time ago, before he got it, Bobby said he's not the type of person that would be good for Manchester United. Now, the fact that Mourinho ultimately was appointed after Van Gaal, I suppose, demonstrates that Bobby's influence at that stage. And,
I think it definitely waned. So there's the different periods called for different reasons.
Yes.
The first reason was Busby's influence over the various managers there. And then Busby's influence declined and Bobby Charlton's influence grew to give Ferguson the chance. Now, when Ferguson then was the man who recommended Moyes, I think Ferguson after that was ignored.
Yes.
And Woodward did what he did in his own way. And I think Ferguson was out totally until they became desperate again. And I think Ferguson's influence was very, very big in the Solskjaer appointment.
Yes. Well, after Van Gaal and Mourinho, 2 big names from the sort of international club, if you like, of big name coaches, and 2 people who'd been very successful in other situations. Then it's back to Solskjaer as the interim.
Yes.
Until we have a look, and then of course he crashes. A lot of he breaks all the records, and now he's breaking the records for the wrong reason. One record, I think, they haven't lost 5 games under since 1981, which they managed to do.
And we're only talking here, and we don't know, but I think Woodward was desperate in the Mourinho situation. I think Ferguson had a huge influence after that,
right?
To say get Solskjaer back.
Okay.
So Ferguson's
has come back into the picture.
Come back into the picture.
Yeah.
Now we don't know what influence, what's going to happen now. We don't know because they've appointed Solskjaer for 3 years.
Yeah, it's one thing that I suppose is worth remembering about all of this is the smallness of Manchester United, the club aspect. There's a former Players Association. David Sadler, I think, is the chairman of that. There's people like Paddy Crowand still around working for MUTV. There's a kind of intimacy about Manchester. It's not like a big remote, like London is, or it's a very intimate sort of place. People talk to each other, and the attractiveness of Solskjaer coming back into that is he's one of us. Yeah. He's one of the people from our own place. He understands our values, and he did very much when he came back this time talk about what Manchester United is. We attack. We always we do these things. We're never afraid. I know they're only slogans.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, when he was doing what he was doing, Solskjaer, he was talking about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and you see all those players. See what happened at Manchester United. The Busby era had a lot of players there playing there for a long time, and they become heroes. Bobby Charlton, Nobby Stiles, all these guys. Of course, they're going to be attached to the club.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? Now, the school of '92 are still there.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
They're still there. Yeah. So they do have an influence around the club because Neville's on television and all the various things. Because they produce
Paul Scholes,
legends, Scholes and
very
Butts there. You know, they're all there. And what's happening there, unfortunately, I think, is for Manchester United, they're talking about their time. What did we do in our time?
Yes.
Right, Solskjaer was brought back with bring the smile to the face, and the reason they had a smile on their face in his day is because they were winning all the time. now they're going back in because Solskjaer did say to himself, "This is what we do when we got this and that." Yes. Now that suited what was needed
back then.
Now, when Solskjaer came in, what's needed now is somebody to say, "I don't care what you did 20 years ago.
Yes,
this is what you're going to do now." Yes. That's what Ferguson did when he was given the chance, Eamon.
Yes.
They didn't go back to Bobby Charlton's time. This is what we did under Matt Busby or that.
No.
Ferguson said, I don't care. Well, I'm sure he said, you're going to do what you do under me.
Yes.
And the thing about Manchester United, which is in many ways, of course they have a history to it, but the history's gone. The new manager, this is what's difficult, has to be a great manager to make his own history.
In making the point about the smallness of it, and you just elaborated on that now with Paul Scholes, a very respected person.
Great players.
Neville, maybe not so likeable, but certainly listened to in the game and around the game and influential in many ways. That the seductiveness, if you like, of bringing Solskjaer back was always is understandable. And then when he did so well, when he came back, and he did spectacularly well, the idea that, look, this is the answer. We got him.
No, I can understand.
Why are we going elsewhere?
I can understand them doing, and it's convenient as well, you know, to do it.
Yeah.
But you have to realise that. Well, I'm sure, and of course, everybody's carried away the emotion. We're back, but when we're smiling on our face and we're doing all. That's because that's what was needed at that particular time after Mourinho. Now, you've got to get away from that. Like, you've looked at Ferguson, I'm going on a bit here, and look at Ferguson in his time. And one of the most influential players, probably the most influential, was Roy Keane.
Yes.
Did you ever see Roy Keane playing with a smile on his face?
No.
Never. He'd play with a scowl on his face and he'd drive them on and do it. Because Ferguson was saying, you do that. You get out there and do it. I don't care about your smile. We have a smile on our face when we've won the cup.
Yeah.
And that. Now, anyway, that's just a bit of a rant about that.
It's actually interesting. And what I'm trying to sort of get to is where they go from where they are at this very moment. And, you were the one of the commentariat, if you like, who said, no, it's too early to give it to him. He has, and you said it on this podcast, let you wait until the summer. And you were firmly of the belief, the Pochettino of the coaches, that they could conceivably get was the person who should get it.
Yeah. Well, there's one I would have given it to him because he had a record. He has a record. He has something. He's substantial in what he's done at Spurs. And that's what they need now.
And he's coming from outside of the village, if you like. Yes. That is Manchester.
Yeah.
And it's important. I mean, not all of football is about 4-2-4. A lot of it is about the culture around the club. Yeah. The culture, the class of 92 or whatever, influencing the narrative, the story.
Well, what the great managers do, Eamon, in my opinion, they use that narrative.
Yes.
They use the history.
Yes.
For their own ends.
Yes.
In other words, they don't go with the history. We don't have to do it this way. They say, that's great. I love it. We'll work on it. But now it's a new era.
Yeah.
Like if I had the choice of manager now for Manchester United, right? Pochettino, I don't think he'll get. I'd go with Conte.
Yes.
Right, Conte at Chelsea, Eamon.
Yes.
We won the cup in the league in the 2 seasons he was there.
Yes.
And what you read is the players didn't like him because they were training too hard. They didn't like this. He wasn't playing with a smile on his face.
He wasn't
doing that. All he was doing was winning trophies.
Yeah.
That's what he's bought for.
Of all the coaches who is out there, I agree with you. Of the coaches who's out there, he's unemployed. He's proven at Juventus. Yeah. He's proven with Italy. He's proven with Chelsea. And didn't take him a long time at Chelsea. Straight in.
2 seasons, Eamon.
Yeah.
And the main thing, the main objection to him was, and another journalist went along with it, the writers, that he had him back training. They were training too hard.
Yeah.
They were doing this. He didn't like him. He didn't put his arm around the shoulder. And he didn't do this and do that. And all he was doing was winning trophies.
Yeah. Now, finally,
that's what Man U, in my opinion, need now.
That's very interesting for Manchester United fans. I hope that you found that discussion with John interesting. It is a fascinating story. It's a fascinating club. It has a rich and deep history with many great football people there, from, if you like, Roy Keane to Paul Scholes to Bobby Charlton, great players. And of course, John Giles was one of those great players.
I wasn't one of the great Manchester United players.
Well, you weren't bad. But the point of, I suppose, today's podcast is to just place the events of this week, and of course they have this huge game against City on Wednesday night, which personally I want them to win, to place the events of this week and this particular season in some kind of context. This is a club that has had its sagas, if you like, before, its ups, which have been huge, and its downs, which have often been, relegation has been there, and of course the tragedy of Munich and many. It's a fascinating club, and many people love it for the right reasons. Some perhaps love it just because of the glory, but it's not all about glory.